Welcome to the Roaming Yeti podcast, where we share stories and tips to inspire you to roam your neighborhood and the world. I'm your host and head Yeti, Beth Scalacci. In today's episode, I speak with Pat Williams about her road trip through the Canadian Rockies. Pat is the founder of CyberClutch, which helps its clients build reliable and trustworthy websites. In addition, she travels full-time in North America in her truck camper and flies overseas once or twice a year. Are you ready? Let's roam! Welcome back, everyone, to the Roaming Yeti podcast. Today, I am so excited to have Pat with me. We're traveling to the far north. We're going to road trip through the Canadian Rockies. Pat, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Beth. Thanks for inviting me. My favorite place on earth.
Is it? Okay. Great.
Yeah.
I'm really this is very interesting to me. You're our first Canadian trip that we've talked to. Um, Tell me a little bit about about the route you took.
The route I took. Well, I travel full time, so it was part of a route, but I actually started traveling through the Canadian Rockies when I was 6 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My parents are originally from Vancouver Island, and I grew up in Ontario, so we went back to visit family quite often, and I've done this route many, many times and seen the changes over the years. So for today, we're going to talk about Vancouver up through Whistler to Jasper, Banff, ending up in Calgary.
Now, I'm going to assume you did this in the summer.
Yes, the summer is the best time to do it. You wouldn't want to take some of those mountain passes in the winter.
So what inspired you to decide to take this trip or this route?
I actually had traveled through the States up the Pacific coast. I was visiting my father who lives in Chemainus on Vancouver Island, and my fiance flew in, and I wanted to show him my favorite places. And the Canadian Rockies, there are places where you can be all alone, unlike so many of the national parks here. So it's really nice and very romantic to go out and be in the wilderness. So that's why I chose it and did it last year.
Well, that's nice to know because I have been seeing so many pictures of the national parks in the US and it looks awful. It does not look enjoyable with all the people. So it's nice to know that if we go up a little no further north, we can get out of the crowds maybe.
Yeah, I'm further north now than 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Still now. Jasper is less busy than Banff is.
Okay. And Jasper's in is outside Vancouver, right? I'm trying to get
It's
my geography all straight.
it's closer to Edmonton, say,
Okay.
Alberta.
Okay. And what's the distance on that trip?
I did not look that up.
I know, I just realized I forgot to send that to you. Well, I mean, how many days did it take you?
It took us probably a week to
Okay.
2 weeks. But we did it fairly quickly.
Hmm.
If you have more time, if you have unlimited time, you can even start in Seattle and take a ferry to Victoria, take in Victoria, take a ferry to Vancouver, and then start this trip.
Oh, wow.
And when you end in Calgary, something I've never done, but it's a bucket list item for me, is to take the train from Calgary back to Vancouver through the mountains. I hear it's like a once in a lifetime trip. And knowing some of the places that I stopped to see the trains on the way, it definitely would be worthwhile.
Oh, okay. So you can make it a round trip and
Yes.
see different things. That's very
Yes.
cool. And you went in your RV, were you in your RV the whole time?
Yeah, I was in my truck camper. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm a camper. I'm also a boondocker. I prefer to just kind of pull off and camp for the night.
Oh, okay.
And it's a little more challenging in Canada, but it can be done with some preparation.
Um, and okay, so can you explain boondocking for me a little
Oh,
bit?
boondocking. Boondocking is when you kind of stay out in the wild and you have no hookups. So you're not connected to electricity or water. Um, Wild camping,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah, I guess that would take a little more preparation. And I'm assuming that Canada and probably there's certain rules of where you can do
Yes,
that. Okay.
exactly. And in Canada, you have to get permits to do
Okay.
it if you're going to do it.
I like to be prepared so no one goes out and does the don't
Yeah.
want anyone breaking the law on my behalf. Thank you.
Well, and especially if you're camping in a tent, you don't want to head out into the mountains and camp in a tent without knowing whether it's a safe place to camp.
Hmm.
Like, for example, in Banff, there are organized campgrounds, and the one that is for tent campers or pop-up campers, it actually has a fence around it, an electric fence, just because of the bears.
Right. That's good to know. You definitely do not definitely do
Yeah.
not want to visit
You
her
want
in
a
the middle of the night.
hard-sided camper if you're going to do that.
Exactly. Um, so with this trip, it's definitely a long distance. What are some stops that people should definitely stop and take in on that trip?
Well, if you're starting off in Vancouver, you need to spend some time there.
Hmm.
Definitely one of my favorite thing to do whenever I'm in Vancouver is to rent a bike and ride around Stanley Park.
Hmm.
It's a park in downtown Vancouver, huge, um, surrounded by water on three sides. And you just do that route all the way around. And of course, there's other things right in that park. There's an aquarium. I saw my first beluga whales there as a kid.
Oh, wow.
Um, there is Capsilano, the bridge there that's, and then there's totem poles, of course, that you can see there. Also downtown, there's Granville Island, which is some awesome eateries and shopping and buskers. Uh, there's Gastown, which is famous. It's an historic area. Uh, and also Grouse Mountain is a ski resort in the winter that overlooks downtown Vancouver, but in the summer, it's just beautiful to go to the top and see the city from there.
Oh, cool.
And also taking water taxis in downtown is fun. Vancouver is a very bikeable city and a very walkable city, so there's lots to do there. So I would do that first, and then when I start the trip, I'd head up to Whistler.
Okay.
And Whistler again is a ski resort. On the way there, actually, there is a mining museum,
Hmm.
Britannia Mining Museum. And it doesn't look like much. I passed it many times. This time we decided to stop. It's actually a worthwhile stop if you're into mining. You actually
Hmm.
get into the mountain
Oh,
and kind of
wow.
feel what it was like. And then there's a lot of really interesting things to look at to see what the mining was like in the area. And it also talks a lot about the pollution from mining and how they recovered it.
Very
Um,
nice.
it was an actual mine at one time. And then yeah, Whistler. Whistler is a world-class ski resort. You probably know it as Whistler Blackcomb.
Hmm.
Um, it is fantastic to go. The town of Whistler has a lot of really great restaurants and
Mm.
some nice hotels there too to stay in. Uh, any of these places, if you're going, you pretty much have to book ahead
Okay.
to stay. They get filled up quick, and it's not an inexpensive trip. But if you're coming from the United States and the American dollar is strong, that helps a lot.
Right.
Um, if you're hikers, I would highly recommend taking the tram up to the top of Whistler. They've got inuksuks up there, which are really interesting. You know, the people made out of stone. So
Oh,
definitely
okay.
photo op um with the countryside below you. There's a bar up there and restaurants, and There's a suspension bridge up there, which is another good photo op thing. But what I loved best was there's a hike from the top that takes you around the back of the mountain and you overlook. It's a big hike. I think it was 5 to 7 miles, maybe return.
Hmm.
But the view of Cheakamus Lake up there with all the mountain peaks behind it is just one of those once in a lifetime views. It's incredible.
Mm. See, now I'm sad we don't have like video running of all these pictures.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually blew that up and put it over our fireplace. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
cool.
an incredible. I could have sat there all day, but then you have to keep going to get back before dark.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was lovely. Um, so from there, I then you start to work your way towards Jasper,
Okay.
and I won't give you the um names of the roadways because there aren't that many that go straight through. So
Mhm.
because of the mountains. So if you just use Google Maps, it'll take you the right direction when I mention these places.
Gotcha.
Um, and anywhere through the Canadian Rockies, it's like coming up the coast of California. It doesn't matter
Mm.
where you stop, there's a view. It's incredible. Um, so take a picnic lunch rather than going into a restaurant. Just stop and take some chairs and pull up the side of the road and eat your lunch there. There's nothing better than that, in my opinion. That's why I take my camper with me.
Right.
Um, and then you'll eventually get to a place called oh, I'm having a there's a provincial park just before you get to
Okay.
Jasper.
Okay.
Mount Robson.
Mm.
Sorry, it took me a minute. Mount Robson. I had to think of the mountain. Um, and it is the most striking mountain I have ever seen.
Mm.
Like it's just when I saw it in July, everything was covered in snow. And it is considered the highest peak in the Canadian Rockies. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
the highest. So that's why. And it is um imposing the just on the skyline. And that was just I saw that from a rest stop where we spent the night.
Oh,
Actually woke up to this view in the morning and it was incredible. And actually we were in that provincial park when we saw our first bear
oh.
along the side of the road. Got some great pictures. It was yeah, the cars didn't seem to going by didn't seem to bother it, so we just pulled over and watched it for a while, foraging through the flowers. So it was quite an experience.
Very nice.
And then you're in Jasper
And then
National
Jasper,
Park.
okay, so Jasper's a national park. Are there any like highlights or is it just beautiful views or
There are many highlights.
hmm
You obviously, like the national parks here, you have to purchase a ticket
Okay.
to get into it. Um, you can purchase, I think, a week at a time or an annual pass, and it makes more sense than paying it daily. Um, but Jasper is there's a small town of Jasper, which is historic. There's a lot of lovely buildings there, great restaurants. You've got a huge selection, stores for shopping, for souvenirs. Expect to see elk everywhere. You know, they're all over the national park, and herds of them. Which is so if you see any cars pulled over, chances are it's elk they're
Oh,
watching.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and so from Jasper, there's places to stay there and then there's campgrounds in the national park too. If you want to stay in a campground with hookups, book it ahead of time,
Right.
far ahead of time as possible. There are what we discovered when we were there, there's something called overflow camping.
Hmm.
So if you don't have reservations, there was still quite a few spots available in the overflow, but there are no hookups.
Okay.
And you can, and it's very pretty. I backed in and I have a door at the back of my camper. I opened the windows, the curtains there, because I was just back to trees and wilderness, and woke up to use the facilities in the middle of the night and caught, I think, a grizzly head that
Ooh.
was at the back of my camper. And when he saw me, he took off. So I didn't get a really good look, but the moon was out that night and it was definitely a bear of some sort. It was a big one.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So that brings up a question
Yeah.
for the non-camping types like myself. Are there hotels that you can, people can stay at in the different cities that they can still visit the parks and then go back to their hotel?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
it's not, it
Yes, there
doesn't
are.
have to be a camping adventure.
No, no,
Okay.
no. There are lots of small hotels, boutique hotels, and then there are the larger park type hotels. Typically, in some places, they're known as the CN hotels, the Canadian National Hotels. I didn't see the one in Jasper, but I'm pretty sure there's one there. Uh, but I'll talk about those when we get further in on the trip. There's lots of choices, but again, book it ahead of time. Expect to pay more, what seems to be more than what you would pay in the United States,
Right.
because the cost of living is a little higher in Canada. And then they also have taxes on top of that.
Yeah, that was I know we'll talk about it more, but I just want everyone to be like, I don't really camp. Can I still do this kind
Yeah,
of
yes,
thing?
yes. There are hotels and motels, and they're right in the park. So you're convenient to everything.
Great.
You're going to pay more to stay in the park than
Sure.
outside, but the parks are so big. It, you would want to stay in the park if you can.
Right. That makes sense.
And there's
Um,
really not a lot outside of the parks either, because especially Jasper, it truly is in the wilderness, and
mhm.
you can go and hike and not see another person. There are some main places to go and visit there that,
Mhm.
so for example, there's Medicine Lake, which is a very pretty lake that you can drive along and take pictures. They had a fire on one side a couple of years ago, so the trees aren't there aren't as many trees on one side. But while we were there was an eagle's nest, a bald eagle nest, and the bald eagle was there and it had a little eaglet in the nest, and we got to
Aw.
see that, and it was fairly close. So somebody with a good um, lens on their camera could have taken excellent pictures, which we did. Um, and then if you go further along, there is another lake. Um, and I want to call it Malign, but that's not the way you pronounce it. I think it's Maline is
Mm.
how you pronounce the lake. And you can get out on a boat and explore the lake. It's beautiful. There's a restaurant there, very good food, drinks, of course, a souvenir shop as
Of
well, and
course.
then hikes. There's lots of hikes from there too, which are very nice.
Very cool.
And also in Jasper is a hot springs in
Hmm.
another direction. I think there's 3 or 4 sections of Jasper that you could literally take a day in each section and explore and hike. Um,
Nice.
and something I learned actually in Colorado, but um, in the hot springs, most people go into these big pool hot springs and sit for the healing properties of the hot springs.
Hmm.
What I've learned is that you shouldn't shower after them. We all do that, right? We have a
Yeah.
shower and we leave. Apparently, if you want the benefits of the minerals in the hot springs, you should wait 24 hours before you shower.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Let that all absorb in. Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
It's good to know.
So from Jasper, and we love Jasper because it's not as busy, it's further away. So if you really want to get away from people, that's the place to go
Okay.
and have incredible scenery. That's definitely it. Um, the route from Jasper to Banff is along the Columbia Icefield Parkway.
Oh.
And that is just non-stop incredible scenery. I'd compare it to like a Marvel action movie. It just never stops.
Yeah.
Just never stops. Even the rest stops are, I stopped at every single one along the way because there was always something incredible to look at. And
Nice.
let's see what's there's glaciers, there's turquoise lakes. The color of the lakes up there is unlike anything you've ever seen because it's from the glacial runoff.
Okay.
Um, and then of course the mountains are really rugged.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the amazing stops, Athabasca Falls, the ice field itself, Columbia, what it's named for, Columbia Ice Field. That is an interesting stop. It's now, I think, a 4-story visitor center
Oh, wow.
that has restaurants and stores, of course, but it's also where you buy your tickets to get out on the ice field.
Okay.
And these machines that take you out there are interesting in and of itself. The angle that it can drive up and down to get onto the ice field. If you stand beside it, the tires are taller than you. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. But you can also, if you hang out there a bit, you can also do a hike out on the glacier, which was new from when I've been there in past years. So they're taking people out to walk the glacier, which is kind of scary because they have crevices that
Oh, okay.
drop down to lakes. So don't do it. I wouldn't do it independently. I definitely take a tour. But you can get out and walk around on when you take the bus tour too.
Mm-hmm.
And they've also built a glass walkway further up the road in a
Those
valley.
things terrify me.
I've never had any interest in them.
No.
The Grand Canyon, any of those places, I've never done them. But I was kind of irritated, to be honest, because they forced us to do it.
Oh,
I am so glad they did. It was
was it?
incredible. Yeah, it was definitely worth it. To just stand on this glass walkway and you look down and there's waterfall after waterfall after waterfall. It's just, yeah, and then you can also see the glacier from there too.
Yeah.
It's just another view. I was really glad I did it, surprisingly enough. Um, let's see what else. Further along after, and definitely do the glacier. Like you'd
Mm-hmm.
have to do it if you do this trip. Further along, you'll see a stop for Peyto Lake,
Mm.
which is a glacier-fed lake. And it's a bit of a hike up to it, uphill, if I remember correctly. You could definitely push a stroller, though. It's all paved.
Oh, okay.
And it's an incredible view. Definitely an Instagram worthy shot.
Yes. Definitely pack the good camera for this trip, right?
Oh, definitely. Or just make sure your phone's up to date so that because phones now take such good pictures.
Exactly.
And then eventually you'll come to Lake Louise, which is a pretty famous place. It's well known. Also a ski area
Okay.
in winter. In the summer, it's known for its hiking. Actually, there's a hike from this is where the campgrounds are that I was talking about, where they have one for RVs and then one for
Mm-hmm.
tents. And we were fortunate to get into the RV campground. That area has gotten so busy that it is nearly impossible to get in to see the sights,
Oh,
like Lake Louise and Moraine Lake. So you have to be up. I think we were up at 6 and we never did get in to see Moraine Lake on this visit. We could not get in. Um, but they now have shuttles. So if you are organized enough, book a shuttle, you'll get in without any problem
Okay.
to both of those places. We were able to drive into Lake Louise, which worked really well for us because there is a hotel at the bottom of the lake. So there's a glacier at one end of the lake and a hotel at the other.
Okay.
The hotel is, it used to be called Chateau Lake Louise, and now it is, uh, it's a hotel chain. I can't
Okay.
remember what the chain is. It used to be a CN hotel. So these are old hotels. They're built across Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and there's one in Lake Louise, one in Banff. I'm not sure if there's one in Calgary, Ottawa, um, and Quebec. And they are beautiful old historic hotels. And um, built at a time when there were no roads. You could just get to them by train
Right.
through the mountains. So it's quite impressive. And the view to have dinner or lunch there in the hotel is worth it, whether you stay there or not. I think the rooms started at 400 a night.
Gotcha.
Um, but often, the few times that I've tried to book, I haven't been able to get in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And getting into the restaurant, the Fairview restaurant, is nearly impossible too. This visit, we got the final seating, which I think was 8:30 at night.
Mm-hmm.
And the food, it's phenomenal. I have a lot of really weird food challenges,
Mm-hmm.
uh, sensitivities, and they take it seriously.
Nice.
Unlike so many other restaurants,
Right.
they took what I was interested in and created it just for me, and it was delicious.
Mm.
Really, really good. So I highly recommend that. They also have a more casual bar sort of um, appetizer area, which is also equally nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also have at sunset or just before sunset, dusk, they there is an outside bar area where you can sit around a fire, and there's
Mm.
usually entertainment, somebody singing, playing the guitar, whatever. And with the view of Lake Louise, it's just one of those happy moments in your life where you just sit and look and can't believe your good fortune of being there.
Nice.
So the nice thing about the late dinner seating was, and having a car, was that when we came out, the hordes of people that are usually there walking around the lake, and
Mm-hmm.
actually there's a well-known hike to a tea room on the lake that you obviously have to do earlier in the day,
Mm-hmm.
but you can hike up. I think it might be 4 miles return. Um, and you can go and have tea at another lake up in the mountains.
Oh,
I did
wow.
not get to do it I haven't done it yet actually, but it's on the list next time I go back. So when we came out of dinner, it was dark, and we sat with nobody there, not a
Mm.
soul, and took pictures of the stars and the glacier in the background, and then went back to our campground. It was lovely.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah,
What a way to
very,
end a night.
it was incredible. Um, yeah. And then we drove into Banff, um, where I actually ate salad and got sick from a food sensitivity. So my
Oh.
guy booked a hotel in downtown Banff so that I could recover. And it was very nice to stay in the city. And well, it's not a city, a town.
Mm-hmm.
In the town, it's incredibly busy, very busy, but there is a huge selection of restaurants. Anything from vegan to fast food, you can get it all. Quality food. There was a nice market going on at the time, which was enjoyable to walk through. There's a lot to do in the town of Banff and
Mm-hmm.
around Banff as well.
And there's a film festival there, right? At some point in each year?
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if there was. It's definitely the place to be. Banff is a lot busier because if you were traveling between Calgary and Vancouver, Banff is in on
Oh,
the way.
okay.
So Jasper is out of the way, but Banff, so it, it has changed significantly since my first visit there. It's gotten
Mhm.
very busy. It's much like the towns outside the national parks in the States.
Gotcha.
Busy, 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 lots of people.
So so plan
Um,
ahead on. Well, I mean, it sounds like the whole trip you have to plan ahead and
you
and
do
make
to
sure you
really book.
book. Yeah.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it to get the places that are closest to what you want to see.
Right.
Um, in Banff, there are surrounding Banff, there's a lot to do. I would highly recommend taking the gondola up Sulphur Mountain.
Mm.
It's a view from the top that overlooks the valley that Banff is in. You can see quite a bit. They've built again a huge visitor center at the top. There are boardwalks that go along the peaks, and you can see an old weather station and research facility that's there, as well as just the incredible views. We ended that day at the very top of the visitor center is an open air bar.
Oh, nice.
And we sat there. Unfortunately, no kids to that part because it is a bar, but
Mhm.
we sat there around the gas fires, listening to music with the landscape in front of us, which is, that's enjoyable too. Um, and then what else did we do in Banff? There is a loop to and forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, Minnewanka Lake.
I was gonna say I pronounce things wrong all the time, so
Yeah,
don't feel bad.
yeah. I think it's Minnewanka Lake.
Mm.
And there's lots to do along the route too. Little walks here or hikes there. Definitely could bike it as
Mhm.
well. It's a one-way loop. And when you get to the lake, there's boat rides, you can kayak, there's hikes, I'm sure you can swim. There's lots to do. And there's also Johnston Canyon, which is a well-known, we didn't see it this trip,
Mhm.
but I've done it before, and it is a fairly simple hike up a canyon.
Mm.
In the winter, if you're there in the winter, you can put on ice cleats and hike it too. Yeah, that would be an interesting trip.
Yeah, I feel like that whole trip would be very different in the winter.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I can't imagine doing it in the winter, some of those passes. You probably can't. The roads are closed, I'm sure, a lot of the
Probably.
time.
Um,
And then the next portion of the trip is from Banff into Calgary, which is not too far. I think it's under 2 hours,
oh,
between an
okay.
hour and two from Banff to Calgary. And there's a lovely little town along the way. I haven't spent enough time there, but I know that a lot of people from Calgary vacation in Canmore.
Mm.
We did stop, lovely bakery, had some delicious treats and coffee on the way. And then in Calgary, I honestly have not done a lot of tourism stuff because my brothers live there.
Okay.
So I tend to hang at their houses. But Calgary's known for the Calgary Stampede.
Hmm.
And there's a nice park along the Bow River. There's Calgary Tower, which you can go up and view. And honestly, my favorite Canadian restaurant is a semi-fast food place called Swiss Chalet.
Oh,
So I would always stop at Swiss Chalet if I were there.
and what kind of food do they have?
It's rotisserie chicken and fries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, just a quarter chicken, white meat with fries and the chalet sauce. That's the that's my go-to meal whenever I hit Canada.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I can see why that would be your go-to place. Um,
Yeah, so I just kind of did the whole thing there for you, and
I know. That's it's quite a trip. And like I said, this was sort of a new route to me, so I didn't realize um how much there was. Like it's
There is a
definitely a
lot, but
uh
it's all easily accessible.
mm-hmm,
It's not, you're not having to drive hours and hours out of your way. Everything is basically along the road,
mm-hmm,
unless you're in the national park itself. And then you might want to take a day for each section of the park.
right. That makes sense. Did you have a favorite stop? I mean, there sound like a lot of amazing stops. Can you even pinpoint a favorite?
Jasper, no
Jasper.
doubt. Because I do not enjoy the hordes of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoy the privacy. I, there's something spiritual about sitting and looking at an incredible view and not hearing anything except sounds of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And Jasper is still good for that.
That's nice.
Yeah. So that would
That's
have to be my favorite. I
yeah.
would have probably said Banff before, but it's just too crazy busy for me now.
And I know you've taken the trip multiple times, but like on that, do you, when you take these trips, what do you learn about yourself? Like, do you come away with a new feeling or a new belief or something that you sort of meld with nature or
Yeah, I would say every time I get time alone in nature, it reinforces the fact that it feeds my soul. But this trip was more about, I'm used to traveling solo.
mm.
And so my fiance was with me on this trip. And I learned that, yeah, I can travel with him on a trip like this. So
He's a
that
keeper.
was promising. That was promising.
I mean, that's a big deal. Like that's a big trip to travel that you're used to doing by yourself, all your trips, and now, to get through that one together. So I feel like kudos to both of you. It's
Yes,
good.
yeah. And it was nice to be spoiled. If I'd been by myself and gotten that sick as I did in Banff,
Hmm.
I don't know what I would have done because
Hmm.
I, I just don't know. It was too hot to stay in the camper with that air conditioning that day.
Hmm.
And he rescued me, which was just very romantic.
It is very romantic. See, romance is not always flowers.
No, no, it's taking care of somebody when they need being taken care of.
Exactly. Um, and when you take these kind of trips, like how did you prepare for the trip?
Well, I'm telling everybody here that they should book in advance
Right.
because I don't follow my own advice. I fly by the seat of my pants, and I did do a little bit of booking, but not nearly far enough in advance.
Hmm.
But that's the way I travel, because not because I'm disorganized, but because I don't know when I'm working how
Right.
long it will take to finish a job before I can. So I'm not sure how far I will get ahead in a day or a week or a month when I'm
Right.
traveling. So I can't book ahead. Um, so yeah, I would say that's my fault. I'm sorry. What was your question?
No, just how to prepare for the
How to
trip.
prepare. So I wasn't as prepared as
Right.
I should have been for this. It still turned out wonderfully.
Yeah.
And the best evening we spent was in what we thought was the overflow camping.
Hmm.
Found out that it wasn't. It was a day use area.
Hmm.
Explained why there was nobody else staying there that night. But we could have gotten in trouble for
Hmm.
that had the ranger not been kind and given us a break.
Yeah.
And that's how we found the overflow camping.
So the booking in advance is there a do you have to do that park by park? Like you have to go to the
Yes.
park website. There's not like I always think there should be like a central.
There might be for the national parks there
Hmm.
for Banff and Jasper,
Hmm.
because they are, I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry because I
No, that's fine.
so
It's
much. Um, Also then, but there was I I bought a permit as a backup.
Okay.
Alberta Wildlife Association, maybe it was, for boondocking along the east side of Jasper and
Okay.
Banff. And you had to book those separately,
Hmm.
which was a bit. There's another national park in there called, I think it's Kananaskis.
Hmm.
That's another beautiful one if you have time to add that on
Yeah.
and tour through there. That will take you down into, if I'm remembering correctly, that will take you down into the national park stateside
Okay.
with going to the Sun Road. Which one's that? I can't remember it off the top
Mm.
of my head.
It's all
It's
right.
where going to the Sun Road is.
Okay. That makes sense.
Montana, I think.
And we talked about that there are hotel and other kind of camping option options.
Yes,
For
yes.
the those of us who don't have an RV.
Banff is very expensive.
Mhm.
There's also the Banff Hotel there, which is another CN, original CN hotel, which is beautiful. I've not been through it. I tried to go through it this time, but they had these archways to the parking, and my camper was not going to fit under them. So I did. There was no, and there, it's hard to get parking
Mhm.
spots downtown as well. So if you have a hotel, I'm sure that they have parking set for you. Fortunately, my guy, he had to pay extra for the parking to park my rig, but we
Mhm.
found somewhere in a back alleyway behind the hotel we were staying at.
Oh, that's good.
Mhm.
Um, and we talked a little bit about food and what are you sort of some of the like if you're up there, what should we be eating?
Oh, oh, there's so much good food. Okay, so sweet tooths.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a sweet tooth,
Mm-hmm.
you absolutely have to have a butter tart.
Oh.
And you can usually find them in, you can get them in grocery stores, but they're not nearly as good
Mm-hmm.
as a proper bakery. And you can get them sometimes with walnuts on them, sometimes with raisins, sometimes without. They're a good butter tart is definitely worth eating. It's kind of similar to a pecan pie without the pecans.
Ooh, okay.
But it's a tart
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a pie.
Gotcha.
A Nanaimo bar,
A what bar?
a Nanaimo bar
A Nanaimo
is
bar. Okay.
another sweet thing that has to, if you, this has coconut in it, so if you're
Mm-hmm.
not a coconut lover, it might not be for you. It's a crust with coconut and chocolate, and then a custard,
Mm.
uh, firm custard topped with chocolate,
Oh.
glazed chocolate. It's totally decadent, and definitely if you're watching your calories, they'll be blown, but it's something you should try. And of course, there's, poutine. That's a French Canadian thing, but it's all over Canada.
Yep.
Um, the maple syrup, definitely worth it. Anything. Let's see, what else?
And chicken.
Oh, yeah, Swiss chalet. Harvey's, if you're a hamburger lover, I
Okay.
don't know how many of them are left, and I'm not sure if it's still good. But
Mm.
once upon a time, Harvey's was the best hamburger and fries
Gotcha.
in Canada.
That's good to know. You gotta have a hamburger every once in a while.
Yes, yes. And there's beaver tails and um that sort of thing. Oh, maple sugar. Something I haven't seen in the States. We have, there's maple syrup here, but
Mm-hmm.
what I haven't seen here is the maple sugar candies. And that is basically, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like crystallized
Mm-hmm.
maple syrup that's formed usually into a maple leaf.
My
And
husband has a coworker who makes those every once in a while. We get some at Christmas from her, and they are so good.
yeah, yeah, very, very good.
It's like, yeah, it's like a brown, it's almost like just a hunk of brown sugar, but
Yes.
but it's
Yes.
maple instead of the
Yes.
molasses, and it's
Yes.
just yes, it's so good.
Oh, and maple cookies too, if you're in the grocery store, they're good. Ketchup chips. Um, yeah, there's Smarties. Smarties are they're like M&Ms but
I was
bigger.
gonna say, is it the is it the
No,
US
no, they're not the
Smarties or the
candy.
really good
They're
chocolate
really
ones?
good,
Okay.
like M&Ms but bigger,
They're bigger. They're so good.
different colors.
We bought some when we were in Paris, and they're so good. Yes, I enjoy them much more than
Oh, and Aero bars. That's another
Aero
one.
bars.
Aero bars. AERO. They're chocolate bars, milk chocolate, and they have bubbles in them.
Hmm,
But I don't know why those bubbles make it taste better, but it does.
it does. Nice. I love it. Um, what what do you wish you would have known, or I guess we've talked about planning ahead, but what other things would you want people to know before they go on a trip like this that you've either learned the hard way or just by observing and doing? Like, usually I phrase it of what what do you wish you knew before you went, but in that way, sort of what any words of wisdom for us?
This is a once in a lifetime trip, especially if you're coming from somewhere else. Because I'm Canadian, I can go back anytime.
Mhm.
And often go back. I have family there. But if you're coming from somewhere else and you don't know anybody, plan it, take the time and plan it, and build in times to your schedule, ideally to take a chair and just sit with an incredible view and take it in.
Yeah.
Like it's just, yeah, that just take the time that if you can.
Hmm.
If you can. We all rush through. I've got another vacation coming up starting Friday at the East Coast. And in order to see everything, I've got it
Hmm.
all lined up there probably won't be a day to rest. If you can take that day to just sit and enjoy the scenery. And expect something I didn't cover is expect to see lots of wildlife.
Hmm.
Expect to see bears, expect to see um, birds, expect to see elk, moose if you're lucky. Um, yeah, lots of wildlife. Be safe.
And yes, please,
Oh,
please don't be
bighorn sheep.
that person and end up on the news. Just leave the
Yeah,
animals alone. Take pictures
yeah,
from afar.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the moose and the bears, you're lucky if you see those,
Hmm.
but you will pretty much see elk, bighorn sheep, that sort of thing.
Very cool.
Hmm.
And I'm sorry, did I interrupt? Were you about to say something? One other thing?
No,
Nope.
if I
Okay.
did, I forgot.
Gotcha. Well, this information is super great. And you know, it's again, it was a trip that I wasn't familiar with, but now I'm very much putting it on a to-do list. I'm not a big bucket list person, so but it's definitely going in the one to-do list. So I really appreciate all this information. Um,
I highly recommend it. Vancouver is my favorite city I've ever seen,
yeah.
first of all. And then the mountains. Eh, The United States has some beautiful mountains. Mount Rainier,
Mhm.
um, and all of those are incredible. This is like more rugged versions of
Mhm.
those over and many of them
Right. Yeah,
back to back.
it sounds amazing. So and I know you've listened to some episodes, so you know what's coming up, but
I do. I had to think about it.
I have my little pop quiz questions that I do not send over ahead of time. But the savvy guest always listen and know what's coming.
Oh yeah, you have to be prepared. But I do enjoy your podcast.
Thank you. Um, what is your favorite road trip snack?
My favorite road trip snack, because I have so many food sensitivities, I can't eat a lot of the normal snacky stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to be a little more creative. When I have my camper, I just pull over and make myself in the back something in the
Right.
back of the camper. But occasionally, if I'm pulling a lot of miles to get somewhere, I will have something in the cab, and that's typically dried apples,
Mm-hmm.
um, nuts, and dark chocolate.
Mm. That's a
So
good
without
combination.
any dairy in it, just dark chocolate. That's really good. And Miss Vicky's chips when I want a salt fix. But they're
Nice.
hard to find, so I don't always have those.
Well, I know you have a planned trip. What is your next trip that's coming up this weekend, right?
This weekend I leave Friday
Yep.
and we're heading to this is something from my fiance's childhood, Ricketts Glen State Park in Pennsylvania. There's waterfalls there he wants to
Mm-hmm.
photograph. So we're going there first, and then we're cutting across to just south of Boston, about an hour south of Boston. So we'll be kind of in the middle of Cape Cod, um, fairly close to Plymouth. I will take in Boston. My fiance's son is going to fly in for the week while we're there.
Oh, nice.
We'll tour Boston and see Salem. And then after 9 days there, we'll go north to the Bar Harbor area and check out Acadia National Park. And
Nice.
my fiance will fly back and I'll start work again and slowly work my way back here.
I love that. Um, who is on your travel playlist? Your road trip playlist?
Oh, I I used to have a playlist that I listened to all the time on
Mm-hmm.
my phone. And it's all the typical things like Prince, The Doors, um, Pat Benatar. But my favorites that I go back to my younger years, and they are Canadian
Okay.
artists. Tragically Hip. I went to high school with a few of those band members. So um, I listened to them before they became the Hip. And then I continue to listen to them now. Wheat Kings is probably one of my favorite songs. And then Crash Test Dummies,
Mm-hmm.
of course, Shania Twain,
There you
Celine
go.
Dion. You got to listen to those. Those are my go-to road trip
Mm.
uh music.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
But now it's Spotify.
Yeah, whatever you can throw on
Yeah.
Spotify for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Again, thank you so much for your time and this information, and I hope people decide to head up north for their next road trip.
Definitely head up north and just plan it way in advance and make sure you have
Exactly.
enough time to do. And if you can like start in Seattle and hit Vancouver Island first, like just go for half a year and
Just
just
a half a year.
half a year and take that train from Calgary back to Vancouver. That to me would be the ultimate road trip.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. But
Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Beth. This was fun.
Thanks again to Pat for all the great information about traveling through the Canadian Rockies. Be sure to check out our show notes to see how to follow Pat's adventures and stay connected with her. And thank you for listening. I hope these episodes inspire you to get out and roam, even in your own neighborhood. Please subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you like what we're doing here, please leave a review and a rating. Also, to help support us, please head to yeti2shop.com to pick up some Roaming Yeti merch. Talk to you soon and keep roaming.